It's the last chapter of The Mandalorian Season 3, and with DBNY being our title track for this big finale breakdown, we ask you to kick your feet up a bit, enjoy the show, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe and hit that bell for notifications, since we can always use your help in having the channel grow. But with that being said, I say it's about that time to cue up our intro and get things started. What's going on? And thanks for checking out the channel. I'm Mike, and to be continued with is breaking down the final installment of The Mandalorian Season 3. And we basically pick up right from where we left off. And we see that Bo-Katan and the Mandalorians are now escaping through some tunnels and caverns from where Moff Gideon kind of like closed them off at the path. While this is going on, Axe-Woves is making his way back to the fleet that stayed back in orbit. He's looking to warn them of the incoming TIE Fighter squad that's headed their way and looking to do much damage. From there, we catch up back with Din, who's been captured, but ends up fighting the troopers and catching them off guard and takes them out, basically freeing himself. Mind you, it wasn't an easy task since Grogu had to step in, using his IG-12 for the win and the save. Din ends up thanking him and explains that it's all or nothing and that Moff Gideon needs to be taken down now. It's here that we get our show's title, Chapter 24, The Return. Now, Bo's crew makes it out of the tunnels as interceptors and bombers take to the sky, going after the Mandalorian fleet that remained up in orbit. We then see Moff Gideon being updated, and he ends up armoring up so he can go confront Din, because he knows that he's escaped and he's on the loose within the Imperial base. We then see Din call in for some help. He basically tells R5 to play the role of R2-D2 as he hacks into the Imperial base system. Now, from there, we see that Axe-Woves did make it back to the ship, and he ends up ordering every Mandalorian off of the ship, abandon it. He starts piloting it while the other Mandalorians jump onto smaller gauntlet fighters, and we see the Imperial fighters getting close, starting to shoot the ship with Axe in the pilot seat. So far, so good. Din now ends up getting help from R5 because right about now, what I need you all to do is picture the part of the Phantom Menace. You know the part when Darth Maul is getting ready to fight Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan? That part, because those shields are here. They have guards stationed at each shield post, and Din is basically leveling up after each shield post is opened by R5. Now, what I mean by that is that it's a real video game type vibe, because first, he fights hand-to-hand only to take on the next set of guards with a shock mason shield that he picked up from the original two guards. Basically, going through the motions until he ends up with a blaster and a jetpack, and he makes it through all of them. A really cool sequence, which ends up leading to another scene that really sheds some light on what's going on. Din and Grogu end up entering Moff Gideon's clone lab, and they see that Gideon has decided to clone himself. One of the clones actually ends up opening its eyes, and it scares the shit out of Grogu, but Din tells him to move out. We then see the clone chambers start to explode, and the entire lab facility is destroyed. We now see Bo-Katan and her crew find some downtime to regroup within some underground gardens that are growing on the planet Mandalore. And as soon as their backup shows up, those other Mandalorians from the ship, they all take flight. Now, with a darksaber in her hand, Bo leads the Mandalorians back to the Imperial base for round 2. With that being said, the Mandalorians who originally were with Bo and the ones that joined after escaping the ship are having an all-out aerial fight against Gideon's super troopers. We then switch over back to Din, and we find out that Gideon was actually literally creating an army of his own. They're all clones of him, but he was looking to add the Force as part of the secret sauce to the mix. Now, he's really pissed that Din just threw his plans out the window, so he straight up shoots a missile that's mounted on his wrist at Din and goes in for the kill. Din attacks back with his guns ablazing, and Gideon is then joined by the Praetorian Guards. You know, those red guys who killed Jon Favreau in the last episode? The Royal Guards, yep. They are simply, at this point, too much for Din, so Grogu gets back in the game, and the Praetorian guards end up turning their attention towards the little guy. Din tries to cut them off, but Gideon just keeps pinning him down. I mean, he's using his cable and everything to keep Din away from Grogu. Just to recap, there's an all-out shootout going on in the air, with the combatants on both sides using jetpacks. There's a one-on-one with Din and a jacked-up Moff Gideon in a suit that's too powerful for our lead character. And now, our young green gremlin is taking on the Royal Guards. And to be honest, they're kicking his ass. They are, I mean, literally slicing away at IG-12's limbs, to the point where Grogu has to jump out of IG-12 just to avoid getting killed himself. He ends up jumping across some light fixtures and basically just running to not get killed. We cut back to Din, where he's getting knocked the fuck out by Gideon, but luckily Bo ran out of things to kill in the sky that she ends up helping Din by flying directly into Gideon, knocking him down. She tells Din that she's got this and that he needs to go save his kid. The action so far is amazing for this finale, and it's actually so good that it makes you forget how frustrating this season actually was. It's that good of an episode. Anyway, it's here that Bo lights up the Darksaber against Gideon as he pulls out some Electro Lance type thing. We get a great lightsaber duel, or to be more accurate, a Darksaber duel that is accompanied by some great background music. The music then turns into a more serious tune as we see that Grogu is pinned down by the Praetorian guards. He's in a bad situation. Just as one of them is about to take a swing at him and deal the final blow, Din takes a shot at the guard, saving the kid. Now, our dynamic duo start doing some real damage as they tag team the three guards. Grogu using the Force to knock them down, and Din blasting them so they stay down. It's a really cool scene, but by this point, both Bo-Katan and Gideon keep going at each other, even though Gideon is actually gaining some ground due to his suit's extra strength and protection. Now, bodies are also flying out of the sky as the battle in the background continues. It's crazy. You're having all three things going on exactly at the same time. It's at this point that we get a shot of the sky and we see that the Imperial ship that the Mandalorians have been using, guess what? It's completely on fire and it's heading straight towards the base after being shot down by the TIE interceptors and the bomber squad. Axe Woves is literally piloting it kamikaze style, and he informs everyone on what he's doing. Bo is trying to take Gideon down, but he overpowers her and also crushes the Darksaber while it's literally still in her hand. Now Din is saving everyone because he gets off another shot at Gideon while the ship crashes down into the base. Utter madness is taking place, and Din, Bo, and Grogu step up their game against Gideon for one more final attack. Grogu uses the Force to keep Gideon's weapons away from him, while Din blasts him to keep him distracted. I'm not going to tell you what Bo does because she takes out this little wimpy shield and it really doesn't do anything. But either way, the base ends up erupting. It's engulfed in flames. Moff Gideon actually goes out in a blaze of glory, while Grogu uses the Force to shield himself, Bo, and Din from everything that's happening. Now, the Imperial base is in ruins, Gideon is dead, and our heroes survive. From there, we see all the Mandalorians gathered at the purifying waters of Lake Minnetonka, and Paz Vizsla's son is taking his oath ritual one more time. Only this time, it's official, since the ceremony is taking place on their home planet. It's here, though, that Din asks for Grogu to go through the ritual, but the armorer states that since he cannot recite the creed, it's a big no-no for this one. The only workaround this is that Grogu would need permission from his parents. And just like a special presentation episode from any 80s or 90s sitcom, Din steps up and states that he is adopting Grogu. And just like that, this is the way for Din Grogu, our little guy's new official name. The adventures of Din Grogu and Din Djarin continue, but right before we see where their journey takes them, we're actually shown the Minosaur that was underwater, under the forge, opens its eyes, signaling a new era for the people of Mandalore. Or maybe it's connecting with Grogu through the Force, or simply it's just waking up due to all the noise that the damn Mandalorians are making up there. Now, who really knows? And at this point, who really cares? Because from there, Bo-Katan reignites the Great Forge and starts a new chapter for the people of Mandalore. The next thing we see is Din's ship as he meets up with Captain Teva on that tropical base planet, and he cuts a deal with him. He states that he will exclusively work with the Rebel Alliance, or whatever the new setup is, and keep an eye on the Outer Rim. He knows that they need the help, and more importantly, he needs the money. Din lets him know that it's a hush-hush partnership that no one needs to know about. He then asks for one last favor. He asks for one of the droid's heads that's hanging out on top of the bar. It's an IG droid head, which he ends up using to rebuild IG-11, which he then presents to Greef Karga as the new Marshal of Navarro. Now, as a sign of appreciation, Karga actually gives Din a place on the planet Navarro, and that's where Season 3 of The Mandalorian comes to an end. The show fades out on Din and Grogu hanging out and relaxing at their new place on their new planet. It's a great finale to an okay season, because if you've seen the first 2 seasons, then you have already seen the perfect ending that this show should have had. And you know that this season was kind of unnecessary. But due to some meddling by the corporate suits, they reunited our 2 main characters, which led them to appearing in the Book of Boba Fett, and then into this hot mess that we call Season 3. Now, while some connections were made for other Star Wars plots, and they set up some really cool ideas that they are introducing for future projects. Now, I could have done with what was originally planned, since it seemed like a perfect way to wrap up their story while expanding the Star Wars universe. But with talks of a Season 4 and some major movie announcements, I would bet my money that this is not the end of Grogu and Din for all of us Star Wars fans. And I'll definitely say that it's not the last time we see any of the Mandalorians. Now, of course, we have these upcoming projects coming up, but before we get into those breakdowns and shows, I want to thank Bobcat the Legend again for DBNY, the great track that was playing throughout this whole breakdown. And don't forget that the links for both Bobcat's YouTube and Spotify pages are in the description, along with that bonus track that's actually a remix of the Mandalorian theme song. Now, if you made it this far, I hope that you enjoyed the ride, and I'm going to ask for a small favor that means a lot to the channel. Please subscribe, like, and share the episode with everyone that you know, and also please comment on what you thought about this season, and more importantly, about our coverage on it. Also, don't forget to hit that bell so that you can be notified of when we drop our next video, which just so happens to be breakdowns of Season 1 and Seasons 2 of The Mandalorian. So even though Season 3 of The Mandalorian comes to an end, remember that everything on this channel is simply to be continued with.